All right. Happy Tuesday, everybody. Welcome to Conversations with the Oracle. My name is Jynnette the Oracle. I am founder and CEO of Anderson Alchemy, LLC. I help to support cultural change through consciousness change by helping leaders utilize spiritual tools and techniques to shift how they show up in the world. And leaders are personal leaders as well as, business leaders, nonprofit leaders, et cetera, et cetera. But for our conversation today, I am so delighted and pleased to have college buddy from way back in the day. We'll talk about how way back. But I'll have her introduce herself.
Hello, everyone. My name is Tennie, and I am the founder and president of Sisterhood of Survival, a nonprofit that empowers, advocates for, and protects victims of sexual violence.
Yeah. So we both went to WashU, Washington University in St. Louis, not any other state. I say the whole name. Washington
Yes.
In St. Louis in Missouri. But yeah, so if you are joining us live, welcome. If you are watching the recording, welcome as well. I do encourage you to get something to sip on. For today, I have Earl Grey tea sweetened with an orange blossom honey and some soy milk.
And I have alkaline water with chlorophyll.
Very nice.
Yeah.
In a wine glass, no less. I'm here for it.
Mm-hmm. Bougie,
Listen, that's how we roll. That's how we stay young. That and sleep. Hydration and sleep. You want to know the secrets.
Yeah.
So I definitely want to touch base with how life has been the last couple of years, but just thinking back, it's popping into my mind about WashU. I think the first year we met actually was freshman year, right?
I believe so. Which dorm were you in? This one, that'll help my memory.
Yeah. I remember dorm names.
I was in Lee.
I was not in Lee. I think, what was the one that started with an R?
Oh, shoot. Yeah.
I can see the entrance and I just can't remember the name. This is 1998, y'all.
Right. So forget it.
So listen, we are well over 20 years.
Yes.
Well over. Next year will be 25 years. So forgive us for not remembering.
Yes.
I do remember the food though. I remember those chicken tenders.
Those breakfast sandwiches, that was my favorite thing.
Listen, brunch period.
No. Was that Bear's Den? I think that's what that was called.
Yeah, Bear's Den for sure.
Okay,
yeah. Malincrot had good food. Like, listen, for those of you who might have kids that are going to be going to college, I definitely highly recommend WashU because it was a wonderful experience, even though it was still hard if you were a poor Black person. Just that cultural difference and the socioeconomic difference, it was really hard. But in terms of the support from the people, the quality of education, like opportunities, amazing.
Absolutely. And for me, so in my experience where I'm from, that was the most Black people I had been around. So, and I understood that it was still only 5% of the class, or I mean, of the school demographic, which was sad, but it was also sadder, I guess, that my experience for me, I was like, this is a lot. This is great.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wait, so where are you originally from?
I am from Manchester, Tennessee. It's like this big. It's halfway between Nashville and Chattanooga, and so predominantly white.
Ooh, wow.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. So it was, I mean, honestly, Celebrations Weekend is what pulled me into WashU. I had been planning on going to Vanderbilt. That was kind of like my dream school, being in Tennessee, but like WashU kept, I mean, they had great marketing skills. They would send something like every day. And I was like, what? I've never heard of this place, never been to St. Louis, never heard of St. Louis. I had really not even left Tennessee except for once, maybe twice.
Oh, the stream froze. Teddy, are you still there? Or am I frozen? For those of you who are live, is her screen frozen or is it me? If you can hear me, let's type in the comments. If need be, she can always pop back on if it is her stream. Fingers crossed, though. Oh, we lost her. All right, she'll jump back on. Yeah, she was frozen. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Oh my God, that was almost 25 years ago. Yo, I don't even know, like my brain right now. My brain. It was so long ago. So much life has happened since freshman year of college. Like just thinking about that. Such a different person now, but also still very much the same. Like there's definitely, I feel like I've been able to maintain my essence, but in terms of all the changes that have happened, just the way that I felt like I had to show up in order to survive in the world. So I grew up in Florida, in Orlando, home of the mouse, and you know, it's Florida, especially back in like what, the 80s. Oh, here we go.
I didn't realize I had to put it back in.
Yeah, it's all good. I thought it was me for a second. Now, as a side note, yeah, today is.
It was, but then I was like, oh, it's waiting for me to. Sorry.
No, so the joke is, of course, today is the first day of Mercury retrograde. And before we jumped on, I was like, please be kind to us. And this is what's starting to happen. So we gonna make it through today's conversation. We will.
Yeah.
But when you popped up, I was just saying like how wild it is that it's been that long and like how much I've changed, but how the core of me has definitely remained the same, but just the ways that we had to show up to survive has definitely like completely shifted. So, but yeah, that's so interesting. Growing up in a predominantly white space for me, I grew up in Orlando, Florida. But most of like pretty much all the schools I went to until high school were all predominantly Black. Because I mean, Florida is a pretty big divide of the races. So like basically all the poor people are going to be the Black folks, the Caribbean folks, the the folks who work the farms and stuff like that. Like it's us, and then it's the white people.
Okay.
So I was predominantly around that, but definite culture shock for high school because I went to a VPA school. And not only was it predominantly white, but it was also a different socioeconomic class. Significant, because I came from like Title I schools and came into this VPA school because I was in orchestra. And yeah, and then just like predominantly white people, especially with the classes I was in. I was pretty much the only Black person and one of only a few women, a few girls. So I didn't realize until like maybe a couple years ago how much that negatively impacted me and my sense of self, like how much I really closed down and how much that influenced the progression of depression that was already starting to set in because of poverty. But like then that on top of it, it's just like, oh, like now I'm not even around people who even have similar concerns that I do. And I just like, so yeah. Anyway, so yeah. Wow.
I didn't realize that part because we sort of had an opposite experience because I already grew up around people that didn't understand me. And, you know, I think we had a variety of socioeconomic classes, even in our small little town. You know, I mean, there were poverty did exist even for certain white families, but still, as far as, you know, you mentioning you being the only one in your classes, I mean, that was my life until I went to WashU. So, I mean, in my graduating class of 331, there was 3 Black people and one of them was me. And it was just 3 women. So I was not even around Black men. I think in our high school, our total high school count was probably like 1,500. There was 10 of us total. And so one is me, two is my brothers, and then the rest was mostly women. There were like another tiny, not even full handful of Black men. So I didn't grow up around Black people, people that had features like me. I went to Wash U, so obviously I was doing my best in like AP classes and things like that because my parents wanted myself and my brothers to get an education because they didn't have one. So we were ostracized by the Black people in our community, the handful that we had, for being too white or being whatever. And I was like, really? It's just that my parents don't let us do anything. It's not, it's not us. Trust me. I'd love to be hanging out and doing whatever, but I can't because they won't allow it, and then, and it's funny because I recently made a post about this, so I kind of found my way in sports, but along that way, even, so dealing with teammates that looked nothing like me in a very small town that still had a lot of backwards ways of thinking. I heard a lot of like derogatory terms, not about me per se, but if you're talking about a team that we're playing and I'm looking and this person's skin matches mine, what do you think about me when I'm not around, or even comments, one of my teammates even made a comment about my lips that like stuck with me all my life. And she was like, I'll never forget, 5th grade. And she said they were so big, I could climb a tree with them. Well, so now we're talking, you're comparing me to a monkey essentially. And that stuck with me. And so like, even, full transparency, being on this live is kind of challenging. Number one, because I've never done one before, but I carried that with me throughout my life. And in talking, I had practiced like minimizing the movement of my lips because I could see them as a result of that seed that she planted. And so it wasn't until 2008, I'll say ish. Well, okay, back up. In 97, a white male who actually had full lips at high school, one day after I was being bullied, he pulled me aside and was, checking in with me, that sort of thing. And when I just kind of like mentioned to him, like that was one of the things that was really bothering me, he was like, your lips are beautiful. I have full lips too. And, and I did look and I was like, oh, he does. I mean, I never really noticed it before. And that helped. It like planted like a positive seed, but I still had another year and a half or so at this school dealing with that sort of thing. So again, going to Washington was like seeing all sorts of, hues and just facial features and things that like, I didn't grow up around because the town that we were in, we were not around any family. We had moved because of my dad's job. So I didn't have any like support in that sense of self, of seeing Black women, of, just really appreciating myself, that sort of thing. So it wasn't until like 2008 that I was in Atlanta and did a random photo shoot to help out a friend. And we did this concept shot actually of just my lips. And that actually made me feel like, oh my God, these are a work of art. Like people pay to have this done. But still, I find myself in instances like with this live, and I can see myself talking where I'm like, okay, there's still parts of that I haven't healed from because I see myself talking. And I'm like,
Wow. Well, I mean, so many things that you mentioned that, and I know for all the Black women who are watching this, whether live or on the recording, will resonate with that because we don't see our beauty reflected to us when we're younger.
Yeah.
And it reflects our sense of self and our confidence and, goes into that, how we shift, how we show up in the world. And it's like, yeah, we can say like, okay, now, yes, I'm beautiful. But like back then, like it was such a fight to just even hold the thought for a second because there was so much no around that. Especially 20 years ago, 25 years ago, 30 years ago.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
I mean, sometimes I wonder if people realize like how much our culture in general has shifted in the last 5 to 10 years. Like, I don't think it's really landing for folks, like how much has changed.
Yeah.
Like, obviously, there's definitely room for more change, but in terms of the level of like freedom and space we just have to take up, like, is wild. Also, Thank you for letting this be your first live.
Yes.
And feeling safe and trusting enough to do so because, it's a big deal.
Mhm.
So thank you.
And
What made you,
space.
I mean, because, what made you want to do that though?
Um, so as I'm, and we'll get more into this later, I'm sure, but as I'm have created this nonprofit that's, helping other survivors, kind of bloom where they're planted, it's really made me kind of look inward at things that maybe I still haven't healed from or that I'm still healing from, and wanting to put myself out of my comfort zone in certain ways because that's how we grow, right? Those pain points are the things that propel you to blossom. And so also I felt like this would be a safe space. One thing I do is kind of honor my boundaries, or at least I try to. And I was like, if I'm going to do this, it needs to be where I feel safe enough to do so. And I knew that this would be the space for that.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, what you're saying about those pain points. One of the things that Spirit has been working with me on recently, the past few weeks, is about how the things that, I judge as obstacles or painful, whatever, they are at this stage of my life. I wouldn't say this to folks beforehand or even to myself beforehand, but at this stage of my life, they are things that I actually can use to strengthen me.
Mm-hmm.
And so the question always comes up is like, when I feel myself getting in a certain kind of way, a certain kind of feelings about stuff or getting triggered or whatever, that question will pop in is like, how am I using this to strengthen myself?
Mm-hmm.
And not in a hardening way, but in a way of it's a deep knowing of trust that I am safe. I'm just experiencing these emotions, but there's more going on. And there's the more going on though is a wisdom of my soul that's like, this truly is not actually a big deal. So how can it be used
Mm-hmm.
as a way to strengthen yourself? Like what's actually being strengthened? And I've been noticing like, oh, okay, these areas of my life or this belief system or this perspective is actually not as strong as it needs to be for what it is that I want to create.
Okay.
And so these kind of lower stakes situations, which might be annoying or frustrating or give a little anger, they're safe places to work on strengthening myself before the bigger stakes situations so that I'm actually prepared for that.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Um, so yeah, I want to honor that wisdom of like, no, this is scary. But I can push past that and test these waters and strengthen in this space.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that definitely resonates with me because, in retrospect, when I've gone through different things and at the time, it was super uncomfortable, or really didn't understand why is this happening to me. Later on, hindsight, you see, oh, it happened for me. And you see that you survived, you made it past it. And then, like you said, a bigger challenge presents itself. And you're able to look back at the wisdom or the tools that you received from that past incident and
Mhm.
apply those. So it's like compound interest, sort of. It just works out.
Yeah. 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 Um, yeah. And then do you find that with that, a lot of the things that you end up having to face are always around the same types of concepts, ideas, and things, and it's just the stakes change over your life, but it's always the same stuff, different context.
It's often the same stuff. Maybe not always, but definitely often. And before we kind of like lost connection, you were asking me about like, how has the last couple of years like affected me? And I think I was able to really look inwardly during our, since we both live in Los Angeles, I think we were in lockdown more than the rest of the country, right? Um, Definitely than the places that we're from, Tennessee and Florida, for sure. So, you know, we were actually in quarantine. It's kind of a blur now, but during that time, I really sat with myself. I was like, this is the most I've ever been inside the four walls of my apartment, like of any apartment that I've lived in, because I've always worked so much. Um, And while I do enjoy alone time, I'm a Capricorn, like I enjoy solitude. I find strength in that sort of thing, but I'm not used to sitting still. So when you have to sit still and be alone, then you're kind of like forced to face certain things like that are like presenting themselves, because what else are you going to do? You're just here and you can't leave. Or, it's like I could escape to my balcony. That was like my space to like rejuvenate and allow the sun to just come. And, but I did have to face a lot of things that I had been avoiding, like some of those lessons. And that's where I was able to see so sort of the bigger picture with some things, like, okay, since we have all this time, let's do a deep dive, and see, what lessons did we learn from that, and I was able to kind of look back and realize, like, okay, there was meaning behind that. There was deep meaning behind it.
Yeah. I've been calling these pandemic years our sacred pause.
Mm.
It's an opportunity. Not everyone obviously has done this, but it's been an opportunity to sit with ourselves and to see what's really there.
Mm. Ooh. Yeah.
And for some, it's, definitely been really confronting because they haven't actually like taken the time to slow down, except for vacation, which is not really slowing down, because usually it's like, I'm going to stuff my vacation with tons of activities. My vacation would be another place where I work.
Yeah.
I work to have fun. Yeah, no, that's, well, I'm glad you have been able to take that time, because yeah, in general, it has been rare, and you can see it's been rare just by how people are behaving and acting overall.
I love that though. Sacred pause. Okay.
Mhm. Yeah. And a collective one really for the world. Like, it's just been like, sit down and see what's there. And we're seeing what's actually there. It's just like, oh, we really don't care about each other, or oh, we don't really, we say the words community, but we're more than willing to like sacrifice someone else's well-being just for our comfort or convenience.
Yeah.
Like, that's more important. We're willing to go back to our routines of pretending that the relationships that we're in are actually fulfilling when they're not.
And, I think that sacred pause exposed that for so many, myself included. But, it really allowed me not just to look inwardly, but to look at extensions of myself, if you will. And very telling. Very telling.
I don't get extensions of myself. So you did touch on this, so let's go ahead and talk about it. You have a nonprofit.
Yes, I do. So it's called Sisterhood of Survival. So think of SOS, like the distress signal, right? I am a 2-time sexual assault survivor. And the first time I did not report. I really sort of like kind of buried it as, I think in some ways I didn't, you always, not say always, but a lot of survivors, they absorb self-blame for what happened. And I think in that instance, because I knew the persons, we'll say, I felt like it had to have been something that I did, or maybe it just didn't register fully. Like, this is exactly what happened to me, and I kind of wanted just to forget about it. This was in undergrad, so I was like younger and just trying to focus on WashU. Like I said, it was hard enough. So, and that really kind of like changed things, sort of just kind of like burying it inside. But I realize a lot of people do that sort of thing as well. I mean, because you're trying to find a way to survive. But then when I was in Atlanta, I went to culinary school, and the same thing happened. I mean, but much more damaging. This was someone I didn't know. This was, I almost lost my life kind of situation. I'm very thankful to still be here. And I felt like if I survived that situation, that I didn't want someone else to go through the same thing with that particular person, but also just in general, I felt like I couldn't just sit around and do nothing. And so when I moved to LA 2014, I will never forget my first time going to Runyon Canyon, because of course, if you don't go to Runyon, you haven't moved to LA. And I lived in Hollywood at the time. So I went there and I was just in my thoughts, or maybe I was hallucinating because I had done it for the first time and I was out of breath, whatever the case was. I had this vision of like sisters, if you will, kind of like surrounding each other. And I saw the letters like SOS. And I was like, oh my gosh, but I didn't have anything to write with. You know, I was like, I forgot what kind of phone I was using at the time. And I was just like, I have to remember this when I get back to my place. And, you know, it was like, so this was 2014, but I still didn't do a lot with that. It was kind of ingrained in my mind that I wanted to do something with those letters. And it kind of evolved into getting the name. But still, it was like, what could I possibly do as one person? It wasn't until I think it was around 2018 that my sister, not by blood, but by love, she unfortunately experienced a sexual assault where she almost died as well. And I was like, okay, I have to do something, you know, and even if it was just like working with her, because fortunately for me, I actually won my case against my attacker, which is, you know, this does not happen often, but I had gone through the whole thing in court and dealing with that whole circus in Georgia, which had a crazy backlog, you know, took multiple years out of my life just dealing with that. So I was like, the least I can do is kind of walk her through at least what my process was like. Maybe hers won't be the same. She was in Tennessee. And, you know, I'm like, Tennessee also has its issues. So I was like, well, we'll see what happens with that. But even though her court results were not the same as mine, unfortunately, she did not get the justice that she deserved. What I did see is this, not even a rage, but this like booming voice come out of her. And she was more of a genteel kind of like woman. And she like really stood up for herself. I want to mention also that she was a police officer and her attacker was also a police officer. So yes, now you're crossing the blue line of silence, that sort of thing. But I was so proud of her.
Was this on duty?
It was not on duty. It was not on duty, but they were so, you know, yeah, it wasn't on duty, but they really conspired against her.
Yeah.
For court purposes to
Yeah.
make her seem untruthful because she was breaking this code, right?
Yeah.
She ended up having to go face off against her entire police department. And that was an ordeal within of itself because no attorneys wanted to take the case. You know, she finally did find one that fought so hard for her and they won. They won. The craziest thing and how people will really show their true colors and turn their backs on you, she had to leave. She had to forever retire as a police officer, like as if she was the criminal, right? She had to retire. You know, I mean, now she's doing her dream job, but through all of that, I saw her really having her voice and speaking out publicly about things. And it was kind of making me look inward at myself where, you know, we're talking my attack was 2007. We're now 2018. And I was still feeling ashamed. And most of the people in my life had no idea that I had even gone through anything. Like I just lived my life. I mean, those that knew, like the very small handful that knew, you know, that came to court with me, that sort of thing, they were there, they loved on me and helped me get through it. But the rest of the people that were involved in my life had no clue. So it was around that time, 2018, 2019, I was getting out of a toxic relationship. And one of our bigger issues was that he was also ashamed, if you will, of me wanting to do this nonprofit and be public about what had happened to me, you know, because how it might affect him. And, you know, I'm like, it shouldn't affect you. It's me that had to go through this. But I used that and through therapy, because I got into therapy after towards the end of our relationship. And my therapist helped me to sort of like find my voice. And not only did she help me find my voice to leave the relationship, but I also decided that I didn't want to hide anymore. And that was when I made a very public post on Facebook, you know, kind of like just detailing my story to everyone. And what I had been doing prior to that for about a year or so, I had like an anonymous blog. It actually was the Sisterhood of Survival on Instagram, where I was it was helping me to get my feelings out there and to talk about things in a way without revealing who I was. And it really helped me, especially during lockdown, because I was talking to other survivors of not just sexual violence, but just, you know, different things that would find my page. And we would have like one-off conversations, and I was able to be a safe space for them and just kind of realizing like I wasn't alone and that maybe my voice was not only vital, but I could help others, you know?
Mhm.
So when I made that announcement, I was already fortunately in the process of putting the nonprofit together legally in terms, like with the IRS, that sort of thing. But with this sacred pause, everything took much longer than
Yeah.
expected.
Yeah.
So this is 2022. So it wasn't until last year that
Mm.
we got approval, even though we had submitted the application in 2020.
Yeah.
So they sort of retro dated the found formation date to August of 2020, which, very grateful for that. But it sort of propelled us, from waiting to like, oh, now we're a legitimate organization. Let's get to work.
Mhm.
So it's kind of amazing how those things can sort of happen when you least expect it, and which was certainly the case here.
Wow. What month in 2021 did you get the notification?
July. And I'll never forget because I was actually talking to a friend just about my story, like giving more details. He was asking me questions about my story. And I will never forget my attorney calling me. I was thinking, like, oh man, I wonder what's wrong. Like, what happened now, kind of thing. But
Mm.
he was calling to tell me that he had received the letter on our behalf that said, like, it has been formed. We retroed back to your actual application date. And I remember just being so full of emotion. I just cried. It was like, how serendipitous was it that I'm talking about this, exactly what happened to me. And then I get the call that I'm going to be able to move forward as an actual organization.
Oh, I love that. Oh, you don't make me cry. Don't make me cry. So, well, thank you for sharing that. Well, obviously we're Facebook friends, so I knew about your post.
Mhm.
I did not know about the WashU assault though.
Yeah. Yeah.
That part.
Very few people knew about that one.
Mm.
And it's, well, not funny. Funny is just I did a podcast that hasn't been released yet where I talk about that for the first time. Not in grave detail, but more than I've ever said.
Mm.
So that will come out sometime this month, I think.
Mm.
But yes, this is also me just finally purging that
Mm.
unintentionally. It was like in the conversation, it just kind of came out in more
Mm.
detail, and I guess I needed to release that.
Mm.
I needed to be able to talk about that more
Mm.
for my own healing because I'm still in the healing process for sure. I mean, I'm in a stage of blooming, definitely, but there's healing that comes with that as well that you still have to do to, continue it daily.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, for all trauma, because there are lots of traumas that we have experienced. And unfortunately, as Black women in this country, some form of sexual assaults definitely is a norm for most of us. You
Yeah.
know, it has been for me. So,
Hmm.
yeah, yeah.
It's the sad truth. And that was another reason. I mean, now my nonprofit is not exclusive to Black women. However, one of our big focuses this year will take place in the fall at HBCUs because although, we went to a PWIs, they would say what you just stated, also kind of knowing that there is a lack of protection for the Black woman.
Hmm.
And I want to be able to focus on young Black women that might not have the support, that might not be believed, that might not have somewhere to turn.
Not won't,
Yeah.
won't.
Yeah.
It's not there.
Hmm.
Um, I know I was just talking earlier about like how much has shifted culturally, but it's still surface level shift.
Yeah.
I know that with the way social media has bloomed and all the different platforms, it gives a sense that everybody is there and they're really not.
Hmm.
It's really really small percentage of the population that's actually engaging in these spaces. Most of the time when we walk outside our door, the people that are in our apartment buildings or whatever in our neighborhood, they're not in those spaces.
Yeah.
They're not being exposed to new thoughts, new ideas. So yeah, it's not there. The support is not there. It's really not. Yeah.
Yeah. I want to highlight that, expose that, but also give, one of the things we just had our annual meeting, and one of the things we were talking about, like, obviously going to HBCUs, there are going to be young Black men there, and I have a heart for young Black men
Mhm.
and wanting to educate them, because so we sort of have a two-prong approach with my organization. Obviously, survivors are paramount. That's the top thing, the focus. I want the focus to be on them, because I feel like survivors, people lose focus on them and they focus on the attacker. But it's like, what about the survivor that's over here struggling now and being put through more trauma just to try to find justice? There's an education component and awareness for family members, loved ones, that sort of thing. But to that same breadth, if you will, one of the things that I think needs to be discussed with young Black men, we do see, and I'm sure there are other races that get falsely accused, but I want to educate them as well about consent, and also being aware of their surroundings and certain situations they might be putting themselves into, and they're not thinking because they're young. College is where, I think in the first couple of months of college, or especially in the first year, the largest percentage of sexual assaults happen on campus. And of course, it's not just women that it happens to; it could happen to men as well.
Mhm.
And
Yes.
you know, and so,
They really
but
don't.
also, men could find themselves in situations where at the wrong place at the wrong time, or maybe they don't understand consent fully because it's not talked about as much, and the wrong move could land you. I mean, you're going to college because obviously you had a bright future ahead of you. You had these plans for your life. You could do the wrong thing and your life could change in an instant, And, so wanting to educate them as well, because I have two brothers, so I have to think about that sort of thing as well, you know? But, obviously the major focus would be for, you know, Black women at HBCUs,
Mhm.
and, finding ways to help protect them or give them support if they have unfortunately already experienced something.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I was gonna say the nonprofit is called Sisterhoods of Survival. So there is a focus on those who have experienced that. So what does your nonprofit seek to provide them in terms of that aftercare?
So one of the biggest things, and I realize, like I said, I'm one of those that did actually seek justice, but I know that there's only a small percentage that does, and after getting justice, I see completely why. Like, you are re-traumatized. Um, it's almost worse than the experience you go through. Just to even try to get justice, and you're not guaranteed that at all. But I'm wanting to, again, healing is not linear, and it's not something that you're going to get over regardless of how long ago your situation may have happened. So creating safe spaces where survivors, a network where they can kind of interact with one another virtually, doing things in person as well, because it helps when you see someone, not necessarily by like you, I don't mean like in appearance, but like you in, kind of like that pain point, someone that understands, because it is very hard for even the most loving family member to understand what you have gone through if they have not gone through it. Because naturally, right? Naturally, a person will be like, well, I would just do blah, blah, blah. Or in their mind, why didn't you just do this? When that's not, that is not the case. You could, in the case of my sister, who was a police officer, that was one of the things they used against her. Well, you're a police officer, you should be able to protect yourself, right? But that is, rape is about power, and your body. There are these neuro responses where you could freeze up completely. Yes, maybe you fight, but a lot of times there is such a fear where in the brain it prevents the body from doing anything. And people don't talk about that enough. We could go into a whole science discussion about that. So having someone that understands, helping you get through life, like I said, educating the family members, because even from my own experience, you could have the most loving, the best well-intentioned people in your life, and maybe they don't know how to help you cope because it is going to be a process. So helping the support systems of survivors, is another way to help them to bloom, because you have to change the environment. You don't fix the flower, you fix the environment. So in order for survivors to bloom, you have to fix the environment that they're in. And that's really one of the things that we want to focus on, is giving a different environment to the everyday survival after the fact. And then, of course, a much, much bigger task is facing rape culture and, trying to prevent that. But that's going to take so much from so many people, us collaborating with other organizations, legislation, the culture that exists currently really allows for violence of all sorts against women.
Yeah. Wow.
And of course, as we mentioned earlier, when it's a Black woman, there's just less concern.
Less support in general, because usually we're the ones supporting others.
Yes.
Oh, thank you for that. So the question that pops up into mind is how did you find the people, the community for building this organization? Because you can't be a one-woman show.
Right, exactly. Yes. I was fortunate that during my worst, I was going to say days, but I'd say years. I had a very close friend that allowed me to live in her home, because I didn't have I didn't have a home anymore, like my own home. And I was kind of like bouncing around. And so that was a safe space that I could go to where I actually felt safe. And she gave me a key, and it was funny because it was a Finding Nemo key. So very childlike, but still it had meaning to it. Like, you got to get home, right? So it was like a safe space I could go to. And she is actually on my board. My sister that I've talked about earlier, she's on my board. And the attorney that I mentioned, in 2017, I think, or 2016-ish, I was working at a hotel in downtown Los Angeles. And it's funny because I'm from the South. So when I hear people that speak with that Southern vernacular, and then I'm always like, where are you from? And then, we exchange banter. But so he was here it was a lot of Southern attorneys and legislators, and they were in a private dining room, and I had to go in as the manager, like, to check on them. But I was like hearing all of this Southern drawl, and I just started being like, where are y'all from? I was like, oh my God, the y'all came out, and where are y'all from? And we're just talking, and he was telling me, we had a side conversation. He was mentioning, like, one of the things that he does is help people create nonprofits, particularly Black people. And, we were having a conversation, and he was like, what is it that you want to do? And at the time I was just thinking of maybe getting experience in a nonprofit, like working in a nonprofit. But when he mentioned that he actually works with helping people establish their own, then I was like, oh, can we have a separate conversation? So it was one of those, like, right place, right time, divine, intervention meetings. And from there, that was, so he's our counsel, not on the board, but like our counsel. And then he had a colleague, a very trusted colleague that has done nonprofits before, that's very well connected, that he suggested. And so it's been really amazing working with these beautiful, bright-minded Black people that see value in my vision. So that kind of like helped again with me being like, well, what is it that I can do? But, people, especially people that don't know you, right? That don't really know you or don't fully know your story, but seeing like, there's some value in what you're saying. I see you're passionate about this. Like, they understand that, like, I'm sort of finding my way. I have no idea what I'm doing, but along the way, like things keep lining up the way that they, that they're supposed to. And I'm just going with it, as I'm kind of like letting my heart lead me, and my passion to help others.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, they definitely are supporting you, but they're supporting the vision.
Yeah.
And you are the steward of the vision. The steward of the vision, but I'm making that distinction because I know I also have entrepreneurs that watch too, and this can come up of this kind of collapsing you with what you do.
Okay.
And it's, you have, I mean, what you do, how you are serving is like a child. And so like you have to give room for that child to breathe, and you do the best you can to help that grow on its own, but that child is not you. So, and it's difficult, especially in the beginning stages, to not take to heart any perceived successes or failures that happen with that child as being an indication of like, oh, I'm not good enough or something's wrong with me. They're just like, no, these are actually just the growing pains of that thing. Yeah. Yeah. What's coming up?
I needed to hear that.
It's hard.
It's
hard. But yeah, we just have to remember that well, actually, yeah, circling back to what you're saying about shifting the culture. When I work with clients and have shifted the business to incorporate more of entrepreneur support. But when we talk about vision, the vision is not something that you can accomplish on your own, because it's an overarching societal thing. So it's a vision that many people are called to. And the points of distinction come through the mission, meaning like the how you want to achieve making the vision come through, who ideally you want to be working with. Like that's where the uniqueness comes in for each of our individual life paths. But that larger umbrella is a collective vision that we are saying yes to. And so it's not on us to make the vision happen. It's to join in with others who are making the vision happen. And to strengthen and affirm where our strengths lie, where our niche is, just like, okay, I have this really unique experience or this unique set of skills or this unique way of seeing things in the world. So that's going to be my contribution. That specific part is going to be my contribution to the whole. And letting that be enough. Letting that be enough. And yeah, just constantly reminding that whatever is going on with the business, the nonprofit, the organization is not a reflection of my personal value because it's not me. It's not me. But that's hard in the beginning. It's hard in the beginning. It is getting easier though. Like I'm 5 years into this business, so I can definitely tell you it's starting to get easier now.
Mm-hmm.
Easier. But yeah, those first, definitely those first 2 years, it's just like, oh my God, why is this not working the way I think it should be working?
Right. No, and I mean, I remember, I've been watching on Facebook, like kind of like your journey, or even just not just on Facebook, but like since we both lived in LA around the same amount of time, and just kind of like that progression when you were working in Beverly Hills and us just talking about like, like, oh my God, okay, came to LA. What are we getting out of this?
Right.
We have these dreams, and it's like, all right, we went to Wash U. What's going on?
Also that going to that school and just being like, what are you doing with your life? Like, why are you not the head of like a Fortune 500 company or like have this $1 million doctor practice or
Yes.
Or consultancy? Like,
Right.
I've just now figured out what I want to do with my life, and I'm like almost 40.
Right. So there's a lot of parallels. So I'm grateful for this conversation, and just, also like, I love seeing people win. And so kind of like watching you, and sometimes I'm like, like I'll kind of like just scroll really quickly, because like in my day life, I work in the very busy hotel industry. So I'm not always really like plugged into social media. Like I post and then I'm like not on there, but I started seeing things, you talking more about your business and seeing how like, okay, this was really taking off. And I'll never forget, it was a couple of weeks ago, maybe been a couple of months at this point, you posting a thing where you were taking a moment to just like honor your process and how far you had come. And you were like, oh my God, I was looking back over this last year and like I made this certain amount. Like, and you were like, I needed to pause to be like, whoa, okay, I didn't realize I was there. And just the gratitude that you had of like, okay, like I've been pushing at this thing and now it's coming to fruition. So kind of like what we were talking about, like, and so maybe someone only like joins in and sees you talking about that now, but they don't realize the time that you
Right. That part. It's just like, this didn't just happen. Like, it's been a lot of tears. It's been a lot of late nights. And only just now starting to feel emotionally and mentally stable. After like 5 years.
Yeah. But it's so beautiful to watch, again, like knowing, like you just said, like literally the assumptions of when you go to wash you and what people expect, or even maybe kind of what I expected initially, I guess, like, when I went to wash you, of what I would be doing. But when you talk about culture shifts, but I also think about like heart shifts, my own, where I realized like, am I being authentic to myself? And that was kind of something that I ran into full force, like a brick wall at WashU, probably junior year. And I think it had to be junior year because I finally had cable. I lived off campus. So I was like, I think that was around junior year. And I remember I finally had cable, watching the Food Network. And like my whole life, I was like, I'm going to be a doctor. And specifically, I wanted to be a gastroenterologist. And, and I had my very good reasons for that particular field, with like my grandmother, who I'm named after, having been sick, and I had a heart for like kids in third world countries, through hunger, that sort of thing. But, I kind of knew probably like by sophomore year that like I was losing that passion for that, and I couldn't explain why. But when I started watching Food Network and realizing like what I was passionate about that I had kind of buried and wasn't thinking about, was I grew up in the kitchen with my dad. I was his little helper. I was his little taste tester, the only one that could like try the things, the one he shared recipes with. He would let me botch all kinds of recipes and he would still take them to work. He would eat them and then he would take them to work because he didn't believe in wasting food. So he would still eat it even when I knew it was trash. And so that was like plugged inside. But I didn't know that was, again, from my little small town, I didn't really realize that was something that you could have a career with, and wanting to express myself more in, I guess, because like all those years I didn't have a voice. And so trying to find a way to really like vocalize the authentic me and not what I thought someone else wanted me to be. Or, it's like, again, and then I go to WashU. So it's like, of course, well, you're only going there because you're going to do some great business, or you're going to be a doctor or a lawyer, and it's like, but my heart is telling me if I continue to go the route to medical school, I'm not going to enjoy it. And I will also never forget, the Oprah show was still on at that time. And there was an episode talking about this very conversation that we're having. And her guests were people that had continued along this trajectory of their life because either their parents wanted them to, or their culture expected them to do certain things. And they talked about the great regrets that they had. And it was one of those things that like wouldn't leave me alone. Like it was like in my mind. And I was like, okay, this is trying to get my attention. And if I need to make a decision, like it's kind of late, but I still need to make a decision. And I did make the decision. I was like, okay, I'm not doing the medical school thing anymore because I didn't have a passion for it anymore. It wasn't there. I was like, but I I knew that it was ingrained in me that the passion like for being in the kitchen, which, obviously I'm doing front of house things now, but I know still in my heart, like that there's a purpose that will be manifested, in the near future, hopefully, or when it's supposed to happen, uh, where I am expressing myself in that way. I know it's coming. Like
yeah, it's November. Spirit's like, it's November. I don't know what's going on. Do you have any events planned for November?
Well, what's funny is that November is my survival date. So November is like, for me, more important than my birthday. Because it's like the rebirth of where, like, literally I was this close to losing my life. And then it was like after that. Yeah. So
what's the date?
November 15th.
Okay. I'm like starting to get all these downloads. What did you end up majoring in though?
Ancient studies, which I loved. I still am like a classics geek. Give me some archaeology,
I didn't even know that was an option. I would have loved that. Like I love history. Like I would have loved that.
Yeah. It was in the classics department, and not really like, and the classics department was such a small part, I think, of WashU. I can't even remember don't even ask me what building it was in. It was like we were off sort of close to the architecture school, but like, in like a dungeon. It was it was so old. I mean, it was ancient. They weren't doing anything to that building. Like, it was probably the way it was since the beginning of time at WashU. Yeah.
Wow. That's so fascinating. Yeah, like I think if I went in knowing I was going to do a math degree, and I stuck with that because math was easy. But I went in pre-dentistry, and then I got to orgo and was like, no. Orgo.
Yes.
And I was so mad about it too, because I was like, this is so interesting and fascinating to me. I had such a hard time visualizing what was happening. And I didn't have enough, I think, biochem under my belt, or a lot of like higher level bio to really work with that. But I was like, if I had that, I probably would have stuck with it.
Yes.
I really wanted to do well in that class. Like that was one of those first classes that I was just like, I want to succeed here, but I'm like, I can't. I actually had to withdraw from the class. So I was like, oh, this is about to be bad.
Same.
So are you doing any any private events?
That is something that I have wanted to do in LA. So when I was in Atlanta, I had clients and I was focused on cakes. And I do still want to do, I'm not really interested in cakes per se, but more pastry. I'm sure you've probably seen, like, I'm into like healthy eating, that sort of thing. But so, meal prep services, because that is something that I was doing, private events. And I think we've talked about this in the past, like if I was doing private events and I was trying to get things up and running. Oh, yes, we did. So during lockdown, I was getting things in order from like an LLC perspective. So that I was really making great use of my time because I had so much time on my hands. So like I have the legal things in place. It's just a matter of, I won't even say finding the time, but I was, so focused on like my work, my jobs, or that sort of thing. It was like, and once we were able to work again, then I just went back into that rat race.
Yeah. Oh, so you already have your LLC set up for the private? Oh, we doing an event in November. Like, no, it's a wrap. We are going to set up a time to connect, because one of the things that I was wanting to do, and then the pandemic happened, was to start doing in-person events, and have them be private networking events the way that I do them, which is really more about like real relationship building and intimacy building.
Yes.
and featuring tea because I'm a big tea person. So, but like having good food and of course, like any way, shape, or form I can be supporting and be ampling up another Black person, but especially a Black woman entrepreneur, like, yes, here for it. Yeah, let's connect. And then, yeah, we can definitely do this for sure. That'd be beautiful, actually. Yeah.
It would.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So we'll get that back up and running because you making your own money.
Right. Yes. You know, and I remember when you asked me that, I'll never forget you messaging me and it going back to kind of even like with the nonprofit, it was like, how could me as this one person do blah, blah, blah. And then I get into my head and you were like, oh, are you doing this? And I don't think I had like the LLC at the time, but then, you know, these thoughts, self-limiting thoughts or whatever, or really fear, if you will, of like, oh my God, okay, now I'm procrastinating on this, or I'm not, you know, so it's funny because I guess it was yesterday, I was having my own like conversation with myself where I was like, okay, enough is enough with this. Enough is enough. Yeah.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, no, that'd be dope. And yeah, I mean, that's something that's just been on my heart for a while because like I'm a Cancer. So like hosting and anything around good food and drink and good people and community is like my bag. So, but I definitely want that to, and the intention has been to have that be a component of the business. Doing private curated new versions of networking in the way that I do them, which is really like good people.
Yeah. Like, which is important. Like that's critical.
Yeah, no, we'll definitely have to do this. So what I'll actually do also is the next time I host tea time at my place, I'll have you come through so you have a idea of like the structure because I use these cards from this company called the Skin Deep. And they have the cards are called the but they have different questions on them that you can ask to like, you know, get conversations going, and they're really, really good. So, but yeah, like what I'd like to do is to do about 2 or 3 rounds, but like give an opportunity for different teas or coffees throughout that experience. And of course, like the meal and like a dessert or like, you know, just something for that and have it be no more than 3 hours, but it's such a deep experience that people just love it. So yeah, I'll definitely have you come through.
No, and it really aligns with yesterday when I was having my own like meeting with myself and just kind of like writing out some like affirmations of like, no, I'm coming up on my 8th year in LA. And, you know, 8 for me is like the number of new beginnings. And I'm like, okay, let's see what really Los Angeles can be for me. And I have to step outside of my comfort zones. And one of the things that I have always wanted to do was like small group cooking classes, but not just that, but like where it's like fellowships, kind of like what you're saying, like, and food is so personal and brings people together. Like I've gone to events where it was like, I went by myself and I didn't know anyone. And the next thing you know, like the whole table, we're like friends and we're like, you know, it's like how, when you're having food, you're sharing food with someone. And that's why, you know, cultures all over the world, that's the thing they do. They invite you to their home to have food. So being able to express myself with my food, but then with other people and connecting with them in such an intimate way like that, literally. So this aligns with like what the things that I was like writing down yesterday.
Yeah. Oh, I'm so excited. All right. Well, what's our time? Apologies. But no, this has been lovely. I'm so excited we got a chance to really dive into talking about your nonprofit and this amazing work. Of course, y'all know I always keep the information for each of the guests down in the description. So check out the website and the Instagram handle. Please give a follow on Instagram because you know how these internet streets work. We need those follows. Do you have a newsletter on the website?
Not yet. It's coming. Like, and I'll say the website is kind of like the first iteration, getting that out there, but we're building on that. And there's so much more to come this year for sure. Like we have a lot of great things planned.
Don't apologize for the website. Like, I I hope y'all see that like that, because this is also how people talk. They'll be like, this is the first iteration. Don't apologize. Because most people don't even get to the point where they have a website up.
That's true.
Because they're trying to like make it perfect. Like, no,
Yeah.
like, don't let that be an excuse.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So don't apologize through niceties.
Call me to the carpet because I'm still working on not doing that to myself.
I'm that person who's just like, no, you're good. You just keep going. Because trust me, like just the way like folks will just get themselves caught up in things that don't actually create impact.
Mm-hmm.
They just give you the air of notoriety or celebrity. And it's just like, it doesn't matter. It matters if people can't connect with you.
Yes.
Right. But yeah, ultimately it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. But no, thank you for taking the time out of your busy work schedule to connect.
I appreciate it. Thank you. I know it took us a while to get our dates together, but
yeah, my schedule. Any last things that you want to say or mention? Or
I think there's the biggest thing. So even though my nonprofit is focused on survivors, one of the biggest things I just want anyone going through anything to remember that regardless of where you are right now, you still have the ability to bloom in power. You still are positioned for a reason, and the wounds that you may have, you can bloom from those wounds that you once bled.
Yes. And we're actually both living testaments on that.
Absolutely.
We are still here.
Still here.
And many of you also still have to help with some really tough shit too, especially with sexual violence. So actually not even just violence, just abuse, period.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're still here. So that means that there is more. All right. Love you. Thank you so much. Goodbye to everyone. Thank you for everybody who is coming, whether you're commenting or not. I appreciate it. Of course, please share this video when it is up. It takes a second for our YouTube to save the video, but it will be up. So definitely share that. And I'll pull a clip and share it on IG sometime next week, for sure. But yeah, good night, everybody. Love you much. I don't know when the next conversation will be. Definitely not this month. Probably sometime in June though, but I'll definitely in the newsletter or on IG, one of the two, I'll let folks know. All right.
We'll be waiting.
Bye, guys.
See you soon.